The fundamental idea in the Shiva Sutras is to move beyond the mind's attachment to dualities, pleasure/pain, success/failure, attachment/detachment, and realize our true nature through heightened awareness and union with Shakti, universal energy. Here's a holistic plan of action, along with a thought experiment designed to help cultivate consistent inner freedom. Plan of action for consistent freedom from suffering. 1. Daily practice of awareness, witness consciousness. Objective: train the mind to observe, rather than react to, thoughts and sensations. Sutra inspiration. Jnana Bandha, knowledge is bondage. Freedom lies beyond the intellect and reactive mind. Action: spend 10 to 15 minutes daily in silent meditation, where you focus purely on observing your thoughts, emotions, or body sensations without judgment. The goal is to remain aware of how the mind creates suffering by clinging to certain ideas, labels, or emotions. Over time, practice holding this awareness throughout the day, in both pleasant and challenging situations. Modern example: imagine you're stuck in traffic, and frustration arises. Instead of reacting, observe the frustration as a wave in the mind without identifying with it. Notice that the mind produces suffering when you resist the situation, but with awareness, it passes quickly. 2. Union with Shakti through creativity or physical movement. Objective: channel your energy into activities that merge the mind with universal creative energy. Sutra inspiration. Sakti Sadhni Arpati. Union with energy, Sakti, leads to creation and new potential. Action: identify a creative outlet or physical practice where you can lose yourself in the flow of activity, like painting, dancing, cooking, or yoga. This helps dissolve ego and the suffering it creates by focusing on pure action, aligning you with universal energy. Modern example: athletes often report being in a flow state, where their minds and bodies are fully synchronized, and they are free from the chatter of thought. Through creative activities, you can experience this flow, giving your mind relief from its tendency to attach to suffering. 3. Refrain pain and pleasure as external. Objective: dissociate from the idea that pleasure or pain defines who you are. Sutra inspiration. Sukhada Kairbar Mananam. Pain and pleasure are external reflections, not true indicators of your being. Action: whenever you encounter pleasurable or painful experiences, remind yourself that these are external phenomena, much like weather patterns. They pass through but don't define your inner state. Over time, this practice reduces attachment and aversion, key triggers of suffering. Modern example: you receive criticism at work, which initially feels painful. Instead of internalizing the pain or letting it affect your self-worth, view it as external feedback. It's like a passing storm that has no impact on your core being. 4. Destroy delusion through contemplation. Objective: contemplate the temporary nature of thoughts, feelings, and experiences to break free from delusion. Sutra inspiration. Mohaprata Samadhi Siddhi. Destroying delusion brings success, liberation. Action: engage in daily contemplative exercises where you reflect on the impermanence of all things, jobs, relationships, thoughts. Cultivate a sense of detachment from them by realizing their transient nature. This reduces the mind's tendency to cling and suffer. Modern example: every night, reflect on the day's events and ask, how important will this be a year from now? Recognize that most of what causes daily suffering is fleeting, and by seeing it as temporary, you loosen its grip on you. 5. Practice detachment in action. Objective: engage in life's activities with full effort, but remain detached from outcomes. Sutra inspiration. Tek Pravta API Anarasa Savid Bhavat. Engage in activity without losing connection to the self, the knower. Action: when undertaking any task, whether it's work, fitness, or relationships, practice giving your full attention and effort, but release the expectation of specific outcomes. By doing so, you stay connected to your inner self, which is free from suffering. Modern example: a person training for a marathon might get frustrated with a setback, like an injury. Instead of despairing, they can detach from the outcome of winning or completing the race and focus on the joy of the process, the training, growth, and challenge itself. Thought experiment for meditation. This thought experiment is a meditation designed to reveal the root cause of suffering by exploring the mind's relationship with dualities. Thought experiment. Who suffers? Duration: 10 to 15 minutes. Objective: examine the true nature of suffering by asking fundamental questions about its source. Start in meditation. Sit in a comfortable position and bring your attention to your breath. After a few moments, allow your mind to focus on a recent experience of suffering, e.g., frustration, sadness, anxiety. Ask the question. Silently ask yourself, who is it that suffers? Wait for the mind to respond with thoughts, memories, or feelings. Observe any identity that comes up, e.g., I am the one frustrated, I am the one who feels small. Gently observe this narrative without judgment. Shift perspective. Now ask yourself, is this suffering happening to me, or is it simply happening in awareness? Reflect on the possibility that suffering is just an experience arising in your consciousness, not something intrinsic to your true self. Observe the space between. As you continue to sit with this question, notice the space between the suffering and the awareness that observes it. Realize that the awareness itself, the deeper consciousness, is untouched by the suffering. Affirm your nature. Conclude the meditation by affirming, I am the awareness in which suffering arises, not the one suffering. Sit with this insight for a few moments. Key insight. This thought experiment helps dissolve the identification with suffering by seeing that it's a mental or emotional experience that arises in awareness, rather than a permanent part of who you are. Summary of the approach. Action plan. Incorporate daily practices of witness consciousness, creativity, detachment from outcomes, and contemplation of impermanence. These are practical methods inspired by the sutras for loosening the mind's grip on suffering. Thought experiment. Use meditation to explore the true nature of suffering and to realize that you are the awareness in which suffering arises, not the one bound by it. With consistency and patience, this approach cultivates inner freedom and detachment, which are essential for reducing and ultimately overcoming suffering.